We seem to be having a technical issue because our friend David Darnell hasn't been able to join yet. So hopefully he will. What I'm going to do is get you started. I'm Kevin Hoare, and I decided to go with the hashtag accountability 2024 because I think a lot of people feel like right now we do not have accountability in any aspect of our government. And from the Oregon perspective, that's going to include federal, state, and local. That doesn't mean accountability is not possible, but we're going to have to work for it. And that is something that we are going to focus here on captive audience for the whole year. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to the show. It is the 2nd of January, 2024. And so last Friday, hopefully a lot of you caught our end of year show, and we were able to have a great guest on, Jeff Reynolds, one of the founders of the Captive Audience, along with David Darnell. And of course, as you know, the rest of the cast, with the exception of me, unfortunately, were able to join. Sonny Danforth, Donna Anderson, and of course, David Darnell. David will probably join here in a minute. What I thought I might do is just kick off with talking about a moment that has been 142 years in the making. The Oregonian, that's right, the Oregonian has just announced that this is the end of the print edition of their newspaper. I think I just saw it sitting someplace recently. Maybe it was in a store, and they are discontinuing printing Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. Those editions used to sell 15,000 papers, but dropped to 4,000 over the years. Those missing days will be featured online. So they're not going to be printed every day. I guess there will be some editions that will be printed, like the Sunday News. The Oregonian lasted longer than most newspapers, but everyone's been downsizing. All of them have been going behind paywalls. It makes it hard for us sometimes, actually, to cover the news on your behalf, because unless we subscribe to it, we can't even see the articles that would be featured. And so, and in all honesty, I do believe that that they contributed to their own demise, not just because of the print edition is something that has been on the decline everywhere, as we've seen electronic media, and particularly these devices here that make it really easy for people to get information, not always good information. But then it was the Oregonian. Was it good information? I'll let you decide. I've had certainly my issues of some of the coverage they've had over the years. It's been puzzling at times, just how their coverage, which I believe Lars Larson referred to as the Zero or the Daily Dead fish wrapper. But we're at a stage now where I think that news is going to be covered by so many different sources, and you can kind of plug into the ones that give you the fullest picture, or share a perspective, or report the news that's interesting to you. The Oregonian, I'm not sure that, other than being the main statewide newspaper in the state of Oregon, has necessarily carved out a niche that people feel like is a compelling one. But we'll see. It still gets a lot of attention, and I thought I'd share that news with you as David should join any second now. I know he will, and we'll be glad to have him. Let me go ahead and post that story to you. I think most of you are watching on Facebook, and we're glad to have you on. Just so you know, we're on YouTube and on X, or Twitter, streaming live right now. And we'd like to be on Instagram. It's a little tough. Instagram, it's not easy to integrate with Instagram. And we'd love to be on Telegraph. Same story, not easy. They made it kind of kludgy and difficult. And then there's several other platforms we'd love to be on, but they require extra work just to integrate with. So for now, that's what we got. But anyone can watch this through the 3 different options, and we hope you share it with folks. So I'm going to share some interesting news with you that I think it, it relates to ongoing stories and stuff that we've been seeing, but it's the latest developments. And hopefully David joins shortly for this one, because this is really interesting. As you know, top of the news. Oh, here, I think we got David. Oh, it says no video feed. He's probably still. Oh, there we go. Well, oh, we had him a second ago, and now he's back. Oh, but his identity is being obscured. Oh, I didn't press the button, actually. I must have hovered over it accidentally. But yeah, first we thought maybe your identity was being obscured due to your years in the mafia. But now that you, it's too late. Everybody knows. So I was just commemorating the fact
Sorry
that after
about that.
no, that's all right. Glad to have you on. I was just mentioning the story that popped up that after 142 years, the Oregonian will not be printed every day. And 3 days a week, it's just going to be electronic only. And, you know, it's probably not that surprising. Oh, I know.
What a shame.
I know.
I don't have any. Obviously, I don't have an Oregonian subscription. I have an Oregon Live subscription, but I think it's funny how some newspapers have gone to begging for donations to keep local journalism alive on their websites. I don't know if you've seen that, but Willamette Week has it, and it's like, oh my God, you know, you're a business.
Yeah, they're a business begging for donations. That should tell you something. Maybe something's wrong with your business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a thought.
Yeah.
And
it's like the clerk at the convenience store with the tip jar.
Exactly. And you know what else? I actually think that they used to laugh at the model that was public broadcasting, but public broadcasting, that's what they do. They beg for donations. And that's after they get money for free from the government to run a good chunk of their operations, which is been of no ending disappointment to me, because I don't like paying for some of the stuff that they do up there. I am totally fine if they want to go and have donations be the main way that they finance themselves.
Well, the government has reduced their workload significantly. I mean, how much work is it to just take a press release points from some government agency and write it out and reprint it into an article? I mean, isn't that what they're doing?
Well, the real hard work is taking that and turning it into an opinion piece that makes the government look right, even more right than the clumsy press release from the government itself. But you're right; they just regurgitate government talking points. And how many government press agencies do you need? You know, we've got enough.
Well, apparently one less releasing information every day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so here's a interesting story, and it's
delayed.
You are delayed. I don't know if you can disconnect and reconnect. I don't want to lose you, but it seems like when you say something, there's about a 3-second delay. You know, the Biden administration doesn't like.
Let me log out.
Yeah, I was just saying that
let me log out and log back
the Biden administration is doing everything to hurt Elon Musk, and I think they're probably just jamming you as a result.
Uno momento.
Okay. While David's reconnecting here, I'll just read a few more headlines to you, and we're going to hit on some of these headlines as David reconnects. One is, and just feast your eyes on these headlines. Over 200 service members demand Biden's military leadership be court-martialed and fired for forced experimentation on troops. The mandate enacted in August of 2021 led to the forced firing of over 8,000 service members who refused to get the shot on religious or medical grounds. The service members say their suffering continues to be felt financially, emotionally, and physically. Biden's military leadership is accused of continuing to ignore their pleas to correct the injuries and laws that were broken. They're asserting that laws were broken in doing this. They're threatening to bring Biden's top leaders out of retirement so they can be court-martialed and held to account. This is 200 active duty and retired service members that are vowing to hold the Biden administration accountable. And they're saying that their rights were trampled in the process of this. Um, and so, of course, that's the COVID-19 vaccine mandate, a vaccine that who demand for which has fallen dramatically, so much so that they're actually destroying most of it. And these service members say that they will do, quote, everything in their power to get accountability, since not a single leader has resigned or been held to account despite the rollback of the vaccine mandate last year. And current and former troops accuse Biden's military brass of continuing to ignore their pleas to correct the injuries and laws that are broken. When we talk about whether or not Biden or anybody that supports his policies in this regard support veterans and military service members, this is basically proof that they don't. And by the way, they got rid of 8,000 service members, and they can't seem to recruit anybody. What do you know?
Am I back, or am I 3 seconds away?
You're perfect now.
Okay. Yeah, I read that I think yesterday or whenever it first came out, and yeah, it's no wonder that our military is turning into a hollow shell. I mean, it just seems to be part of the whole commander in chief's building back better, I guess, is what his plan is. And it's obviously people in the know go, hey, this is not working, and I'm glad to see people standing up and taking action.
And why don't they just admit that maybe it was mistaken or unnecessary, that it didn't accomplish what they said it would do? Now that they have hindsight, they won't even do it. They won't even admit that they screwed up and that they were wrong in hindsight.
Right.
Look, if you want to say, okay, well, they shouldn't be court-martialed or prosecuted or whatever, but they should admit that they're wrong, so that somebody is at least held accountable in terms of policy going forward. They can't do that. So that's why we have to do the tough stuff here. And hats off to these folks, because some of them are active duty. And active duty guys, this is a tough thing to do.
Well, yeah. There's a chain of command, and if you violate that, then there will be repercussions. And further down the hill, our military will go. And I think our military is becoming increasingly important, at least in my worldview, because things are heating up. We've got a war in Europe, we've got a war in the Middle East, and most of the analysts that I listen to think that we'll probably have a war in Asia, that China will make a move on Taiwan before Biden's out of office. So I think they're his preferred commander in chief, or preferred adversary. So,
well, and the same thing, I think Iran's going to go and say they're going to announce that they've just tested a nuclear weapon, and when they do that, all hell's going to break loose. Hell's going to break loose. Yeah. And why not do it while you still have the cadaver in chief supposedly in charge of the military? I mean, you said that the military is more important than ever. Well, one of the reasons why it's becoming more important is because the commander-in-chief of the United States military is becoming less credible with every passing moment.
Right.
That it started with, I think, fundamentally with Afghanistan. I personally believe it started in 2020, when there was no foreign policy and national security debate in the presidential debates. They just didn't have time for it. It's the only duty the president has that he actually exercises with some degree of unilateral discretion at times. And we didn't have a debate. But by 2021 August, we found that our foreign policy began the beginning. It was like the crumbling of the cliff of the first piece of a mountain, and now it's just like, and it's crumbling. And it is impossible to talk adversaries out of engaging in hostile acts and taking advantage of opportunities if you've already convinced them that you're not credible. Usually what you end up doing is you get into wars because deterrence collapsed, and therefore in order to rebuild it, you actually have to fight a real war.
Right.
The truth is about not having to fight wars. That's
Right.
what we had under Trump. That's what we learned from Ronald Reagan was the way to not only prevent a war, but to win a Cold War.
Peace
That's how
through
we won a
strength.
Cold War. Peace through strength.
Yeah.
And we don't
And
have
some
that.
and some BS Star Wars thing.
Yeah, but you know what? They were so certain that we were credible and that we were serious too. You know, if Joe Biden announced that he was going to have like a super duper laser weapons program and that it was just going to, no one would believe him. They'd be like, "You mean the dumbass who did what he did in Afghanistan?"
There's no way. There was no way he wouldn't gaff it up.
I know he would say he would accidentally have one of those Freudian slips where he would say the opposite of what he was supposed to say when they handed him the script, and it would sound like he was surrendering. You know, that's this guy.
Yeah.
And I think that every moment that he's in office, and I'm not talking about just the presidential election, and I actually still don't believe he's going to be the Democrat nominee. I think that one's just being set up now because no one wants to be the one that forces him to not be the Democrat nominee. But the former president who lives in Martha's Vineyard, who's actually running things, in many of our opinions, is pretty much going to decide when this happens.
The gay guy in Big Mike, is that who you're talking about? The gay Kenyan?
Yeah, the guy who apparently can make Secret Service people take forever to go rescue a drowning man. Yes, it's amazing. But look, you're right. I got to listen to the show on Friday, and I think that was your prediction. I mean, we're going to see something. That's the only thing that's been consistently true about the last 3 years, is that what we thought was going to shape the year and what we thought could happen will be surpassed by what actually does happen, and it will be bad.
Well, yeah, right. In the last 12 years, in the last 3 presidential cycles, we've seen a very well organized, effective, and concerted effort to create chaos in America. 2012, we had Occupy. 2016, we had BLM, and 2020, we had COVID. And I fully expect there's no reason to not expect in 2024 another presidential election year that we will have some sort of organized chaotic or chaos event. Probably, given the fact that I think BLM was an amplification of Occupy and COVID was an incredibly large amplification of BLM. I think we're looking at something probably more serious than we're thinking could happen, even after the normalcy bias killing last 3 years. And my wife Karen pointed out to me yesterday that the invasion at the border could very well be part of that. And so she's, because they're being brought over in mass numbers and they're being sent to cities. It's quite possible that those people will be organized into some sort of chaotic event to disrupt life in America during a presidential cycle, which has been the left's go-to play and standard operating procedure for 3 cycles now.
Yeah, I'm not worried about other countries destabilizing the United States directly, because we've got a government actively working to do it because it works to their advantage. It has worked to their advantage. That's undeniable. And no one's been held accountable. That's the one thing about elections. The one thing that elections are really there for, ultimately, you might say, well, it's to choose who should lead the country. Yeah, but actually, because elections are often backwards looking, they're not forwards looking. People don't say that this is what we're going to get if we do this, if we vote for this person next year, it's going to be X, Y, and Z. Usually it's because they're really unhappy about something that's ongoing or has happened and left them with the primary impression that they have. And so if that's the case, then how do you affect things? You disrupt things. You
Chaos, yeah. Chaos allows for a variety of different things to be done, right? And the chaos of COVID was shutting down virtually everything, killing small business, taking kids out of school, and basically disallowing anyone to go to the polls because it was just not safe, you know?
And there's
And
a lot of people that have come to think of all this as just an aberration, except that it's the culmination. We know that all this stuff that they were doing, this wasn't something they just suddenly came up with. Like, you know what? I think we just came up with an idea. Let's do it. No, they had these on the shelf, and they just didn't know when they would get to do them.
yeah,
And so many of these things they're still doing. This border stuff, you know, the easiest thing in the world, if Joe Biden really, really does want to get money to, say, Ukraine, is to cut a deal on the border security. And that's the one thing that we're sure right now is not going to happen unless Republicans agree to something that isn't border security, but gives Joe Biden, you know, some cover.
yeah.
And that's the only thing I'm worried about. And I don't think they will.
Well,
But
the invasion at the border is not by accident. I mean, it's by design, and it's, you know, obviously part of some sort of plan. And discussing this particular scenario with my younger son today, he said, you know, yeah, he said, you know, Occupy had their whatever, BLM had their bricks and their milkshakes and their bottles and all this stuff. And he goes, well, what if these people are organized, and instead of a pallet of bricks showing up someplace, it's a pallet of AK-47s.
yeah,
I said, yeah, I mean, it's perfectly plausible.
well, what if you have sort of just unlimited numbers of untraceable, untrackable military age males from China and the Middle East, pretty much everywhere in the country,
Yeah,
able to go wherever they want,
yeah.
uh, and and then and then you think that when a bunch of these turn into, say, I don't know, attacks or disruptions or taking down infrastructure, we're going to hold an election? You know,
Right,
that's a question that someone
right.
should be asking.
We're gonna
The
have to
person who,
postpone. We're gonna have to postpone it for everyone's safety.
yeah, yeah, that's right. We have to abolish our nation's constitution for your safety and comfort, and
Yeah,
they will do
yeah.
it if they can get away
The
with it.
president, the
Which
president has that power. The
yeah,
president has the power to suspend the Constitution.
yeah, because Biden does it every day. Yeah, and
Yeah,
even when he does it and the court slaps us down, it's like, I don't know. I think we'll do it anyway. You know, try and stop us. And that is what
right.
people. But I think the biggest problem is that we've got too many people in the "this must be an aberration, it's going to be fine" camp, as opposed to it's a culmination. This is where it's heading camp unless we take strident action, and we got to move people into that ladder. Now, here's something that's a little sign of what you just talked about. So, protesters cut off entrance to PDX. Protesters in roughly 50 vehicles blocked the road heading into Portland International Airport for an hour Monday afternoon, according to Port of Portland spokesman. The caravan of protesters intending to protest the war in Gaza obstructed the inbound lanes of Northeast Airport Way, west of 82nd, around 3:30 p.m. Portland police responded to the protest and cleared the roadblock after about an hour. If you're somebody who was going to barely make your flight and missed it because of these guys, yeah, I hope you change your mind about whether or not people should be doing, if this is a legitimate form of protest that you're going to tolerate. The protest was still
I,
causing traffic congestion as late as 5 p.m.
I'd be very interested to know how many of those cars were rental cars. Because back during BLM, we saw
Yeah.
we saw protesters fly in every Thursday and fly out every Sunday, and that was happening all over the United States of America. So you know, some reporters got to be. God, I would think there'd be a reporter somewhere, Kevin, that would go, 50 cars. I wonder if any of those are rental cars. You know?
Yeah, there's a rental. You can. They probably just drove down the road and returned them at the airport. You know,
On their way out of town. Yeah. On their way out from wherever they flew in from. Yeah.
so this is something that shows that this is going to continue to fester. It's going to continue to smolder. People are going to brush it aside. What they should be doing is taking all these folks, rounding them up, and charging them with serious crimes,
Yeah.
and impounding those vehicles, and then assessing financial damages for what these people did. And of course, the report here ends with the has not led to any known flight delays. Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, if you could determine if these people flew in and rented cars and did this and flew back out or whatever the hell, then you would know that it's not an organic protest. And once you determine it's not an organic protest, then you know someone is organizing it and someone is paying for it, and paying for no small amount of money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that person is a traitor. I mean, that person is, whoever's paying for it is probably
an actual insurrectionist.
Yeah, probably subject to federal charges.
Yeah.
You know, if you support Hamas, you hate America, and you know, I don't think that should stand. And I think, like you say, accountability 2024, and we've already talked about accountability. I think these people need to be held to account. And I think and I know we probably don't have any reporters watching our show, but I think somebody ought to get off their ass and figure out where these people are coming from and who's paying them.
Yeah, and then when someone doesn't even bother asking that question, who's in law enforcement or investigative bureau, then let's investigate them.
Yeah,
they should be investigated, because that's we got to follow this all the way. Now,
isn't that what the FBI is supposed to be doing? You know, don't we have?
Yeah, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Sure.
Don't we pay quadrillions of dollars to billions of cops everywhere? I mean, somebody's got to ask the question, right? I mean, some Portland cops got to go, you know, these all look like rental cars, you know, and rental cars have a certain, you know, I don't know, a certain appearance, you know. I would ask the question. I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask Angela Todd about that, see what she thinks.
Yeah, you know, FBI, maybe it stands for flagrant Bolshevik insurrectionists now. I don't know. They need a name change soon. Now, speaking of that, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, the folks in Chicago.
Oh, that xenophobic, racist guy?
That's right.
Actually, I said xenophobic prick on Twitter, but I wasn't sure if I could say that on this show, but I guess I just said it.
But here's what he said the other day. Here's the idea is still festering in the brains of morons, and being bought by even more moronic people. Is he said, and he's the guy, by the way, who was elected to do even more of the previously worst mayor, one of the worst mayors in the country. What's her name? I forget her name, but we used to have a nickname for her too. That allowed crime to skyrocket and basically nothing be done about it. Well, here's what this guy came up with. He said he's calling for reparations as a way to reduce violent crime. See, all you have to do is take violent criminals and give them money, and they'll stop committing crimes and be violent. Because no one will view that as a reward, will they?
Stop criming?
Yeah, stop criming.
Well, that idea, it's not the first time that idea has been floated, Kevin. I've heard it floated a number of different times. You know, when we start talking about universal basic income and all that stuff, criminals, give them money and then they won't have to go do crime. Okay.
Well, and he's talking about getting the money from, because he's already tapped the millions in COVID funds they apparently still have sitting around. So you thought that was to fight COVID. Not really. Apparently they're using it to deal with the influx of illegal border crossers that have flooded into Chicago. But now he's like, well, if we just took, I don't know, millions of dollars and gave them to people in the South Chicago community, we will see a drop in violent crime and everything will be great.
Well, he was bitching yesterday about 300. This was his bitch yesterday. This morning, just after 1 a.m., a private Boeing 777 originating from San Antonio, private 777.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I can figure out who owns that actually.
Yeah.
That's pretty easy to do. Landed at the Rockford, Chicago airport carrying 350 asylum seekers. There was no communication from Texas, and the city of Chicago was alerted by authorities in Rockford regarding the flight. So he's bitching about these people coming to Chicago across the border, which is completely and totally supported, planned, supported, and funded by his party's ruling elite. And all I can say to Brandon is, Mayor, these poor people, these military age men with new shoes, new clothes, and new cell phones are just looking for a better life. And what better place to find a better life than in Chicago?
Yeah, exactly. They're having to eat their own sanctuary dog food now, and I think it's just desserts, as the saying goes. But it's also the case that we're seeing it fuel a surge in crime, which should be no surprise. Which he's saying he's going to solve by giving them money. See, that is the solution they have to everything.
Yeah,
we're just gonna helicopter money into people who are doing the wrong thing, and we're gonna get the right thing. Which he knows that's not true. He knows we'll get more of the wrong thing, but then we'll need more money to fix that. There's no end to this. People have got to wise up. Now, maybe a moment of wising up finally happened. I'm going to give you a couple of stories that I think will suggest that maybe something has started to happen. Harvard president Claudine Gay is resigning this afternoon, or resigned this afternoon. It made her presidency of Harvard the shortest in the university's history. She expressed her deep love for the university and her heavy heart for stepping down, for engaging in plagiarism, which is something that people get regularly dismissed from the university for doing. And she did it while being a subpar academician, and it got away with it for decades.
Academician.
She nearly got away with it this time too, except for the fact that they've seen like $1 billion in donations evaporate to the university, and I guess at some point she realized it was just going to be too much. And then we know it started with what she said, her professed double standard about anti-Semitism and how she was
on the context.
Yeah. And then this additional information leaked out. She has 50 plagiarism allegations against impacting about half of her personally published works over the years.
Yeah. Ostensibly that is the cardinal sin in academia. But we all know the actual cardinal sin is pissing off rich Jewish lawyers to where you don't get money.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. But also, I think that they started finding that the university really just couldn't explain it anymore. Right? They ran out of excuses. They thought everybody would look the other way because of her skin color. That's it. They were sure that was going to work, which just tells you something about how idiotic the people are. The worst part of it isn't her. She was known to have all of this.
Right.
No one should have been surprised at what came out of her mouth in front of Congress.
Right.
It was shocking and stupid, but not surprising when somebody believes what she believes. It's the board of Harvard.
Has anyone checked to see if she plagiarized that?
That would be hilarious. I'm pretty sure that was easily plagiarized from the leader of Hamas, who might sue her, except I believe he was just killed in Beirut. So apparently it'll have to be filed by his family members, his next of kin at this point.
Who should be dead sometime in the next 60 days, probably.
Exactly. And I don't think anything anybody says to Israel is going to stop them. If you've read any of this stuff about what has been recounted with the using rape as a weapon, it's just stomach churning, unbelievable, horrible stuff. Yeah, and there's people saying, hey, that sounds like about the same as what Israel is doing, bombing Hamas.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But I don't feel bad for Gay. She'll file a lawsuit. They'll settle out of court. She'll never have to work again.
Yeah, no, she's set. She's going to write a book. She may even
Oh, that
plagiarize it,
too.
but
Yeah.
everybody's going to buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. How they kicked me out of law school, how they kicked me out of Harvard because I was black and occasionally, well, often use someone else's words.
That's right. So ask not what you can do for your university, but ask what you. And there's a way. There's all kinds of ways that this could play out. But I think what's nice is she doesn't have to come up with it herself. She can just copy it from someone else. She's really got an easy life.
Somebody, I sure hope somebody, and it's not going to be me. I sure hope somebody goes over a book with a fine tooth comb. Maybe uses AI to scan it and see how much of it is in fact plagiarized.
Maybe she'll write it with AI and just get around that problem entirely and say, "Look, it's not my fault. It's Chat GPT's fault.
Yeah.
I'm innocent."
Yeah.
In fact, Chat GPT, racist. There you go.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
She should use Grok. Grok was developed by an African American.
Oh, so it's okay. It's better.
Yeah. Yeah. Elon Musk.
Oh, right. Oh, yes. Grok. Yes, he is an African American.
He is. He is. Yeah.
So here's a story for you. Climate scientists say we should embrace higher CO2 levels. While governments are pouring billions into lower CO2 emissions, several climate experts are saying that CO2 is essential.
Yes.
And higher levels is not a problem.
It's a building block of life.
Well, it's
we all learn in the 5th grade.
Yeah. It's plant food. It's been at much higher levels long before anyone was driving SUVs and generating electricity from fossil fuels.
Yeah.
But this is the Oxford Academics Bioscience, a bunch of amateurs from Joe Mama Tech. You know, it's the Oxford Academics Bioscience division.
Yeah, well, it is a foreign school, so
that's true. But you know, while you have when you have politicians saying that there's too much CO2, but academicians now are saying it's fine, then actually these same politicians are actually saying, but we have to spend a lot more money. And academicians are saying don't. And the politicians are saying that we need to use wind and solar energy, which is unreliable and must be subsidized by the government. And we should eat less meat in order to save the planet. And then none of them do that. Then at some point we got to stop listening to these idiots and realize that it's just a giant scam. And quoted in here, somebody interviewed on Captive Audience, I think a couple of years ago, Patrick Moore. He's the chairman and chief science of EcoSense Environmental, and he was a co-founder of Greenpeace, who decided to leave Greenpeace when they started banning elements on the periodic table. That's what he told me. He's like, "I'm done. You guys, you know."
That's like burning science.
That's
burning
right.
books. It's burning science books.
He set science aflame. That's right. He really explains how the stuff that's happening has a very natural progression to it and cites something called history and science in doing so, which the politicians don't do. They just refer to a consensus.
That'll get you banned. That'll get you censored.
Banned. I know. Well, it'll probably get us censored. I mean, who's surprised at that anymore? But we haven't stopped. I mean, we keep saying crazy stuff that turns out to be like conspiracy facts, conspiracy realities.
Premonition.
Premonitions, predictions. And it's going to continue. And I think we've found a way to continue being a voice no matter what, which is we'll just keep doing that. Why would anyone stop? Now, and we are going to point out when accountability is needed. Here's a great example. A prosecutor who interfered in the Hunter Biden investigations actually stonewalling Congress now. So this is the Leslie Wolf, who actually in 2020 required references. This is while President Trump was president. Required that references to President Biden, then of course former Vice President Biden, an affidavit for a search warrant, said she was not authorized to talk about how she and others handled this probe into Hunter Biden, even though she was, and she says she's significantly constrained by guidance from the Justice Department. I don't remember Congress being constrained by
being
the
constrained
Justice
by
Department.
by the third branch of government.
Right. Which is being run by the guy being investigated effectively by as a result of this. This is not there's not a limited power that Congress has in this regard. And
yeah, all these people are showing up in Congress and they're saying, "Hey, look, you know, the higher ups, no talking. Sorry, can't talk to you, Congress."
I mean, who told her this? George Soros, Klaus Schwab? Is there the real higher ups, right?
Well, she can't. Yeah, she can't disclose that, obviously.
She declined to say why she instructed agents to remove references to President Biden in the investigation. And it's at the heart of why this investigation duped the American people. Election fraud. That's the actual election fraud that we can prove. She was a facilitator of it because they hid factual information from the voters that the voters said after the election would have changed their vote had they known it. And the lie and the entire circumstance of this investigation that was covered up was perpetrated in part by her. And she won't say why she did it. We're going to find out. She is going to be compelled to talk, and sooner or later. So you know that this is, again, just part of the same game that we talked about to figure out how they can get away with whatever they can get away with long enough to win elections this year, which they will disrupt.
Yeah, they absolutely will.
This is proof they disrupted the last election. Yep. And they did it using people who were supposedly investigating crimes that they in turn covered up.
Right. Yeah, but we've seen it. We've seen it. We've seen the election year obstructions and chaos fall apart. You know, BLM fell apart. Big scam, $90 million down the tube. People, you know, bought their own homes with it. We saw Occupy was traced back to Open Society. I'm sure BLM was traced back to Open Society. I think Pat said, Soros, all Soros funded stuff. I mean, it's kind of like the invasion of the border. The election interference was not accidental. It was planned and somebody paid for it.
And the person who facilitated this entire effort to cover up the Hunter Biden laptop with a bunch of lies and got, what was it, like 50 national security people to sign on to it. That guy's Secretary of State right now. And he ran something called the Penn Biden Center, which apparently a bunch of this money now appears to have flowed into, and a bunch of secret documents are being hidden there that didn't belong there.
Right. Yeah. Well, Democrats fail up, Kevin. You know that.
They fail up and they get rewarded for wrongdoing and cover-ups. And that's why it continues. Now, I think that maybe another good story to mention, but this is one that something good has happened and hopefully accountability is starting here and now, is Judge Radicchio in Harney County.
Oh, yeah.
You had posted this, and he struck down every single objection that the state of Oregon raised to his decision to enjoin, which is to stop, freeze Measure 114, which is the effort to end your firearms ownership in Oregon and prosecute Oregonians who try to buy firearms, which is supposed to be a constitutionally protected right, not just under the U.S. Constitution, but under the Oregon Constitution, even more so. And he knocked all those down. And so the Marxists have lost another round, but they're still trying, and they're going to appeal it, and they're going to appeal it to a friendlier court at each level, the appeals court and then the state Supreme Court. But kudos, right?
Yeah, it's good news, and it's a sad state of affairs where the Marxists representing the Marxist state of Oregon have unlimited taxpayer funds to pursue every legal avenue, every legal remedy possible without any consequence whatsoever to get this thing enacted. And the most, as Kevin puts it in his Kevin, I forget his last name. Yeah, Starrett puts it in his, his newsletter. The most law-abiding people in the country, and probably in this state, legal gun owners, have to come out of their pocket to fight this at every step. And it's just, it's hard for me to imagine that the people that wrote the Constitution of the United States, and probably even the people that wrote the Constitution of Oregon, would think that this is okay.
Or even possible. Like, not,
Yeah.
they wouldn't even consider, like, this is just like, no one is gonna.
Yeah.
And sometimes the only shortcoming our Constitution has at times is that that they didn't actually conceive of just how much people would try to destroy the Constitution through what are effectively extra legal means. That's
Right.
what they were trying to do.
Right.
But then
Right.
that is why it takes a
And
principle.
Constitution hating judges.
Yeah, but that you can shop around for and get the ones that you want to make these
Yeah.
absurd arguments that have to get struck down sooner or later in order for our constitutional republic to actually survive.
Right.
And I believe that actually there will be a reckoning over this, but I don't know if it'll be at the state level. This was passed by a very thin, razor thin
Oh yeah.
margin, and like Measure 110, I would like to think that people will get an opportunity to reconsider what was being done with that vote, as crime has surged. And crime has surged not because legal gun owners are roving around just shooting people in the streets. It's because people who didn't bother obtaining a firearm legally and maybe are not even eligible under the law to do so, are actually the ones committing these crimes and causing these homicides. They're the ones, but those people actually get arrested. If they get charged, they get released right away so they can go out and commit more crimes.
Yeah.
That's how it's working.
Yeah, that's exactly how it's working. And, as we've said from a macro standpoint, as we've said many times on the show, and I think most people probably understand, is, in order to enslave a population, in order to impose a tyranny upon any population, you have to disarm it. And Democrats have been feverishly working for it for 100 years. And they're relentless, and they won't stop, and they'll use our money to do it.
They plan to use and collect it eventually at gunpoint, because one thing you can't do if you're a defenseless populace is defend yourself from the people who aren't who have the guns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in this case, if they're successful in disarming, it'll be the government who has the guns, and that's the only reason the Second Amendment was put in there. I mean, it was a given when this thing was written that if somebody tried to kill you, that you would go ahead and kill them. Right? Yeah. You didn't need a law to say, I can defend myself with a firearm. That was a given.
Yeah.
The Second Amendment was very explicitly designed to allow a people to protect themselves against an armed government,
and their rights.
Yeah. And as you say, all laws, regulations, rules, taxes collected, everything is ultimately enforced at the point of a gun.
Yeah, with force. Well, so the last story I wanted to mention kind of tells the story of what, today, it's guns. Tomorrow, if you like driving a car, especially the car of your choice, or the car you can afford, or the car that you can afford to fuel, Oregon apparently has an ongoing war against cars. And this is being pointed out by Samantha Bayer of the Oregon Property Owners Association, which is a fascinating commentary because she kind of tells chapter and verse, if you piece all this together, if you are driving a car, or worse, a diesel truck, you're going to find what you thought was sort of your right. I think people think they have a right to drive a vehicle as long as they comply with, safety regulations and get a license, right?
Pay all kinds of taxes.
That's right, and pay your taxes. You have a right to get around, to do things like obtain food, work your job, um, uh, visit family and friends, freely associate. But she lays out here pretty clearly what's being done with the rules that were laid out, starting with Kate Brown and her executive order in 2020. In March of 2020, she ordered all state agencies to take actions within their authority to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And the so-called DLCD immediately launched the Climate Friendly and Equitable Communities Rulemaking, or CFEC. Um, this small group of staff and a handful of stakeholders are rewriting all of Oregon's transportation planning and housing rules to do one thing: reduce the vehicle miles that you are allowed to travel. And
cluster you into a 15-minute city.
That's right. If you can make it annoying, difficult, and frustrating for people to find parking, drive cars, people won't.
Expensive.
Yep. People will instead opt for public transit, riding bikes, or walking, which, by the way, none of these people do. You won't find all of our Democrat state legislators biking everywhere.
No.
They'll say, well, we're important. We need this. This is for the people that should be eating cake, in Marie Antoinette's words.
Yep.
And they really want to force you to do this because it is a religious conviction that they will control the weather if they force you to do these things. And ultimately, even if they drop this rationale that they have for why they believe science explains their point of view, the control will never go away. Just like with COVID. They never wanted to let go of all these rules, but it is spreading across the state. Every single city and county is establishing what they're called climate-friendly areas. And you know who gets forced out of these areas first? Existing residents and the poor, which is crazy. They don't give a crap about the poor.
Democrats' favorite target is the poor.
That's right. And this is been building, and now there's like thousands of nonprofit groups that all receive money from the government to fight for climate justice. And as they fight for climate justice, what they're really doing is they're fighting you, and they're fighting against your ability to heat your home, fuel your car, have any mobility, heat your water, cook your food, and they'll literally invent anything in order to explain that this is why this has to be inflicted on you. And it's being done by a bunch of people who haven't been elected to do anything.
Right. And who probably have no expertise in anything. Not that you could have an expertise in stealing the liberty of an American.
That's exactly.
I guess you could learn that in Russia or China or North Korea or Cuba. But
well, and Pat here on our feed said that I don't think people will ride bikes 20 plus miles to go shopping.
It's 30 miles for me to go shopping. 30 miles one way. So 60-mile round trip if I want to go shopping. If I want to go to Home Depot.
What does that mean? That means you won't be able to shop for anything.
Yeah, it's 100-mile round trip if I want to go to Costco.
And so they know that one thing they can prevent you from doing is going to Costco eventually. And
or Home Depot or Safeway
and these are the same people who think that getting rid of farmland is a great idea. Let's start connecting the dots on these insurrectionist morons who are eating your freedom. And because they may say you shouldn't eat meat, but that's because they're devouring your freedom.
Yeah,
that's what they're doing.
Yeah, well, the eggs that hatch, the eggs that are laid in each September in Eugene, where communists return every September to lay their eggs, are fed on your liberty, your freedom, and your rights. Those are the only things that nourish the eggs of commies, and that's really what it is. I mean, they're commies. I mean, McCarthy was right. There's one behind every bush.
Well, and if you don't like it, expect them to organize protests, which will disrupt your life. They'll start sending reparations to the people who are taking all their time to disrupt your life. They will, and even if they're wrong, they'll never admit it. in hindsight. And then when forced to tell the truth about it, they'll lie. And if one of them gets caught, that person will resign and they'll just keep doing what they were doing anyway.
Yeah.
That's what they do. They just don't give up unless you are prepared, everyone out there, to put an end to it.
Yeah.
And that is what, so welcome to 2024, everyone. This is what we're talking about. This is why accountability is everything.
And that's why you don't give up your guns.
That's why you don't give up your guns. It ultimately gives you the power to make sure that you can hold accountable whoever is trying to take away your freedom and maybe even end your life.
Yeah. Life means nothing to the commie, the Marxist, the progressive, the Democrat. You know, it's nothing. It means nothing. You know, they spent 40 years, 40 or 50. Well, if you guess it's 50 years now in the education system, devaluing life. You know.
Yep, that's it. And then
you can kill an unborn child. You can kill anybody. You know? Old people, retarded people, blind people. I mean, just shoot them.
And then when they get your kids into those institutions, they also decided to put woke plagiarists in charge of them, who equivocate when they say, well, this person probably did deserve to feel violent threats and hate speech, because they are actually, we don't like them. It's these other people that we will arrest you if you say anything about them. And then we do not have a society of freedom and equality anymore, but of a kind of aristocracy, a woke, corrupt, lying aristocracy that wants to eliminate your ability to have any freedom and your ability to protect your own life. And so 2024 means you're literally going to be fighting for all of those things. Start at the ballot box and hold everyone accountable. Don't stop there.
I agree. 2024 should be very interesting.
Well, as the ancient Chinese curse goes, may you live in interesting times. I think
I do.
Joe Biden's certainly trying to facilitate that curse upon the United States, and he's getting paid to do it. So he's doing a good job. They're getting their money's worth. But
yeah.
But anyway, folks, thank you for joining us here tonight. Thanks for joining me here, David. Good show.
Thank you, Kevin. It was fun. Thanks everybody for showing up.
And we're glad to be back here in 2024, where we will keep bringing the stone cold truth and demanding accountability. We will see you tomorrow night on the next episode of The Captive Audience. I think, David, you and Don will be on tomorrow night, so it'll be a special one.
Yeah, Sunny's out on Wednesdays for the whole month, so she'll just be around on Friday.
So it'll be a little bit of merry-go-round of who's on, but we'll keep it going, and we'll be glad to keep doing that. See everyone. Have a good night, and keep fighting. Take care.